3.5, 4 years ago, I had a series of events that precipitated a midlife crisis. I thought that my success academically would translate to anything. The business has failed. I ended up struggling being the breadwinner of the house. I didn't know how much longer I could pay the bills or make things work. My wife, my son were depending on me. To have that threatened was an enormous blow to my self-esteem. I felt like a failure, and it just wrecked me. I withdrew. I don't think my wife really knew what was going on with me, and I just didn't know how to talk to her. I was doing something, and my son pointed out to me, he says, "Hey, Dad, you look pregnant." He was holding a mirror to me that I didn't want to look at. It was an impetus to change, that I really need to make a change, and it can't just be weight loss. I have to change everything about me.
Wow. Chris Tubbs joins us now from his home in Houston, Texas. Chris, that video diary, let me tell you, you put it all out there. You talked about your midlife crisis as a huge crash that left you feeling worthless and like a failure. And that affected the whole relationship with your wife. Did you know it was happening at the time? Was it in real time, or were these reflective ways that you viewed it?
No, this was real time, but I didn't know to think about it as a crisis. I just knew the light was getting dimmer. If you think about life feeling alive and energy, I was just getting dimmer, and I didn't know how to fix it. I just knew I didn't like it. It felt worse and worse and worse. I didn't know what to do.
You linked it to some of it anyway, to your business issues and business failing, and you said it impacted you and that it made you feel your feeling as a man, you know, because it's so much about masculinity and manhood is linked to, you know, providing for the family, as if we're still cave people. But you saw this as a sense of worthlessness.
That's exactly right. So I worked for a company. I'm a scientist. I was a pharmaceutical scientist and did that and loved it. And then, got a little complacent and decided to go do my own thing like we do in America, just make your own way.
Yeah.
And I did that for a little while, but I wasn't very good at it, and I wasn't prepared, and things went bad pretty quickly. And so as I said in the video, I am the breadwinner of the house. And so that gave me a feeling of masculinity, of manhood. Like you said, Kate, I bring home the bacon. But
Right.
if I can't bring it home and it feels threatened, then it began to feel like I didn't have much value. And that was a negative spiral. It just started a negative spiral.
Looking at that photo of you and your wife together, hearing you say it affected your relationship. We talk about women, and I know she's hormonal, or she's going through the menopause, or blah, blah, blah. But with men, we forget to talk about how that impacts your self-worth, impacts your relationship with her. And she's your rock, and she has your back.
Yes.
And now you're not communicating with her.
Yeah, that's the key. I did not I was of the kind, the man cave, my cave was inside of me. So when I began to feel bad, or I had these negative thoughts, I simply just withdrew further. And I don't think she knew how to reach me, or I was closed, because I felt like I have to fix this. I have to fix this by myself. So I didn't reach out. I didn't know how to reach out to her. And I really don't know how helpless that made her feel. It's something that I hadn't talked about with her, but it's horrible.
Coming up.
And it doesn't have to be that way.
It doesn't have to be that way. Coming up, Chris thought he'd overcome the midlife crisis, but then another blow to his life, a health diagnosis that complicated things further. We're talking to men all hour long from all walks of life. What is it like to have a midlife crisis, and how it impacts the whole family? More next.
I decided I needed to go ahead and get a general physical, and the PSA, which is the test for prostate cancer, came back very high. Although the test was high, it was close enough to normal in my mind for me to justify that I'm fine. And I waited to see the urologist. I didn't want to know. I told myself I was okay. And that was a mistake, because I wasn't. He did some more tests, a little bit more blood work, and then he actually did a biopsy, which was quite scary. It came back that it was cancer, and actually significant amount of cancer. I had to decide, do I allow fear to shut me down, or do I attack this?
We're back having a conversation with 50-year-old Chris Tubbs, and that was a clip been revealing that over 6 months ago, he received a prostate cancer diagnosis. So, Chris, we went to break. You were explaining how you're going through this midlife crisis. You're now kind of withdrawn from the family and your wife. And then you have this happen to you, a conversation again that men are having everywhere, all around the world, and you get this information coming in. How do you process that?
Oh, that's so heavy.
It
This is in
is.
the middle of COVID, right? So last year, we were all dealing with anxiety and uncertainty and distress. And then I have this big diagnosis, and it rocked me. It really shook me. But I was in some ways prepared because I was training, tied in with the crisis. I had begun an exercise and a health journey, and that was to train for triathlons and do an Ironman, which is a very long distance triathlon. And so, in that regard, I was prepared, but it still hit me very hard. It was very scary.
I can imagine. I mean, so now you're worried about your health. You're now thinking about your child. You want to be there for your child, to see them graduate, get married, all these things. And your marriage is now struggling because of the midlife crisis. What did you do? How did you start to get things back on track?
Well, one thing I did was I made a conscious decision to address everything mentally, emotionally, and physically. Like I said, my son told me I was pregnant, so I knew I had to do something to get back in shape. Mentally, I was in a very dark place, and I just didn't want to be there anymore. I knew there had to be a way out, and so I had to do something very hard, and I chose this Ironman. I called it my ridiculous goal. I didn't know if I could do it, but I decided it was the way to go. I decided to open up.
Did you jump into this physical while trying to decide what to do? Because you had prostate surgery, right?
I did. So prostate surgery was about 4 months ago. I started doing the health journey about a year and a half ago. So I had been in the process of getting healthier, and then this hit. So it's in some ways fortunate that it hit a little bit later. So I was more ready. I was more resilient.
So you basically had this checklist. Boom, you get your health together. Then you have this physically as far as weight. Then you have the prostate cancer scare. You have the surgery there. You're well here in front of us now.
I am doing well.
But then you still have the outlying issue of your wife and your marriage and how all of this impacted you and her. What happened in getting that reset? Because she's been there throughout all of this, watching this.
She has. Yes, it's a long process. So it's a matter of really the biggest thing was opening up, just learning to be comfortable, being vulnerable with her and just saying what I'm feeling and what I'm expecting, even if it's embarrassing. It sounds silly. That's my wife. You know, we've been together for a very long time, but there was still hesitation on being vulnerable. And once I began to do that, I realized she was so much more comforting and supportive than I imagined. It helped more than I can say. And I did some counseling, like Meta described. I've gone to counseling to talk as well.
Well, you've been sharing this story with so many people, and I think there are many layers and complexities to it. But the fact that you were able to unpack it and attack and deal with these things each to rebuild your relationship with your wife and be there for your son, it's a triumphant story, and I know it's a work in progress. We appreciate you joining us.
Yes, and I'd like to say, if you'd like to keep, chatting with me, Journey to Ironman Texas is on Instagram. Just follow me, or my blog is journeyto140.com. And I appreciate you, Tamron. I have to say, I've enjoyed watching you light up the stage for years, and thank you for having me and talking with me.